This is Jupiter Today for the 28th of December 2014. Jupiter Today is a daily podcast focusing attention on the Jupiter system for the purpose of monitoring activity. At 0 hours UTC, the position of Jupiter on the celestial sphere is 9 hours, 37 minutes, 51.7 seconds, and positive 15 degrees, 1 minute, 45.6 seconds. The angular separation between Jupiter and the Sun, as seen from Earth today, is 134.119 degrees, and that's 1.079 degrees greater than it was yesterday. The distance between Earth and Jupiter continues to get shorter and shorter. Today it's 686,295,067 kilometers, and that's 1,695,088 kilometers closer than it was yesterday. And that results in a relative velocity between the Earth and Jupiter of 70,628.67 kilometers per hour. And that's 1,273.21 kilometers per hour slower than it was yesterday. The central meridian at 0 hours UTC, CM1, 144.58 degrees, CM2, 110.59 degrees, CM3, 8.28 degrees. At 0 hours UTC, Io begins the day in quadrant 1, heading east. Europa starts the day in quadrant 4, also heading east. Ganymede starts the day in quadrant 2, heading west. And Callisto spends all day in quadrant 4, heading east. 6 hours UTC, Io has passed its eastern elongation and is now in quadrant 2, heading west. 12 hours UTC, Io now firmly in quadrant 2, heading west. Ganymede also in quadrant 2, heading west. There'll be some interactions between these two moons I'll mention shortly. At 1800 hours, both Io and Ganymede are transiting Jupiter. Europa is passing behind Jupiter. It's now in quadrant 1, heading east the rest of the day. And by 0 hours UTC tomorrow, Io is in quadrant 3, heading west. There will be 10 Jupiter satellite events. At 1321 UTC, Ganymede's shadow ingresses. At 1445, Europa disappears into the shadow of Jupiter. At 1531 UTC, Io's shadow ingresses. At 1623, Io begins its transit of Jupiter. At 1654, Ganymede begins its transit of Jupiter. At 1658, the shadow of Ganymede egresses. At 1748, the shadow of Io egresses. At 1840 UTC, the transit of Io across Jupiter ends. At 1922 UTC, Europa reappears from behind Jupiter. And at 2031, the transit of Ganymede across the near side of Jupiter ends. So two interesting intervals. From 1654 to 1840, both Ganymede and Io are transiting Jupiter. And from 1531 to 1658, the shadows of those two moons are both on the disk of Jupiter. There are 4 satellite mutual events, and that's the most that has been reported so far in this podcast for a single podcast. At 4:25 to 4:26 UTC, the shadow of Ganymede eclipses Io. It's a 1.4 minute event with a very negligible and not measurable magnitude flux drop of Io. This event occurs 96.76 arcseconds from Jupiter, and the two moons are 43.07 arcseconds apart. And at this time, Io is still in quadrant 1, heading east. Ganymede is in quadrant 2, heading west. And the shadow of Ganymede is moving on to Io. And in fact, Io is moving into the shadow of Ganymede. Mutual event number 2 takes place from 7:39 to 7:57 UTC when Ganymede occults Io. This is an 18.2 minute event with an estimated magnitude flux drop of 0.484, and it's 103.87 arcseconds from Jupiter. A very visible and notable event. It would be great for someone to do some photometry on this event. From 1510 to 1536, Ganymede once again passes in front of Io from Earth's point of view. This is a 26-minute event with an estimated magnitude flux drop of 0.567, but it only happens 13.82 arcseconds from Jupiter. That's going to be a more difficult event to capture. And from 1910 to 1922, the shadow of Ganymede once again eclipses Io. This is a 12.5 minute event with an estimated magnitude flux drop of Io of 0.022 magnitudes. But again, Io is only 13.3 arcseconds from Jupiter, and the two moons are separated by 26.96 arcseconds. Interesting thing here is that, as you can see, Ganymede is still transiting Jupiter, but casting a shadow onto Io. 24 hours of Jupiter sky. Unfortunately, we won't see much of the interaction between Ganymede and Io because of our particular location above the latitude and longitude of Jupiter of 0 degrees both ways. And it just so happens we won't really see those events, but you can see Ganymede starting to pass in front of the Sun, and Io is going to be catching up to it. There goes Europa into Jupiter's shadow. And from Earth we won't see it until it comes back out, but we see it reappear first here. And there's Io and Ganymede interacting. The red spot crosses Jupiter's meridian twice today. First is at 6:46, and the second is at 16:42 UTC. Got a number of new images to show, mainly from Twitter. Io and Europa were having an interaction here at that time. And someone actually made a little time-lapse movie of a transit of Io that occurred in the early hours of the 25th of December. You can see the time there. This runs forward and backward in a loop. Beside the small glimpse of Ganymede that we see happening here, when Ganymede moves from the shadow of Jupiter to behind Jupiter, the most interesting thing that I see in this movie is that the shadow of Io stretches as it gets to the edge. And that's just showing that Jupiter is a sphere. And there was some new radio data as well. But no new papers. So please subscribe. Enjoy hearing your comments. You can send your images to me at the email shown. And until tomorrow, I bid you peace.